Ron, and welcome to We All Be News Radio and TV, the news-free Dixie for the 21st century.
We All Be is the honor have on the one and only, the incomparable, the Honorable Judge Joe Brown. How you doing today, sir, or tonight, rather?
All right, Mr. Hurd. How's everything with you, sir?
I'm good. I can't complain, man. I'm blessed and highly favored, I guess. I mean, it's halfway through the first month of the new year, and things are on the upswing, though it's getting cold outside. So what's going on with you?
Oh, I'm okay.
Yeah, so it's so much. Yo, go ahead. I'm sorry.
They are announcing this new show I've got coming up called Hot Topics.
Oh, excellent.
So that will be coming to you soon. Check it out. It'll be in your local listings. Anyway, that's good, I guess. We will be stirring up some controversy.
That's excellent. Well, that's very much. Congratulations, Judge, on that accomplishment. So I know people, I know in the chat comment section of our videos we've been doing for a while, people have always asked when is Judge going to come back on the TV. People know that your presence is needed, very much so right now, especially relates to strong, positive black male role models that could be accessible to the people. And speaking of what's going on right now, it's like there's a witch hunt of hetero black male symbols in our culture right now. I don't know, it's kind of weird. Everything's going on. Could you speak on that a little bit?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's not really new. It's just that there is a push. For the last 50 years, they've been working on what they've been doing, emasculation of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And racism and the manifestations of race consciousness have been basically a smokescreen for that. We get impacted by it anyway. However it works out. It's bad for black men and indirectly for black women. But some black women don't see it that way, and that's unfortunate. And we have your white supremacist type white guys, and the straight ones are being targeted as well as black men. And we have the other kind that seem to have been prospering as a result of this. LGBTQ is doing very well. They've been exercising able and capable politics, and they're in charge in most of the top echelons of both parties, Republican and Democrat, whether it's federal, state, or local, are in the back pockets of LGBTQ, if not charter members. So congratulations to them for being very political. And they also control the primary means of the world's propaganda, to wit Hollywood. So they've been using that in a sophisticated fashion to inure the public to that agenda, so that the public is gradually acclimated to it. They're pushing the tranny thing because this idea that people can make choices about what they are rather than what they were born as is supportive of their general theme, and it's also going along with the posture that they are born that way. They didn't choose to be that way. So that means that they would be entitled to the same kind of consideration as somebody would have based on race, color, national origin, religion, or sex, or medical conditions. It's an interesting move in terms of strategy and tactics.
Now, and also you speak to Hollywood and the things right now. I know what's been a hot topic for, I guess, the majority of the new year has been this, some people call it mockumentary series on Lifetime called Surviving R. Kelly. and the fallout from that. We got Gloria Allred. She's getting in the mix now as being the lawyer for some of the so-called victims of R. Kelly. And then you got a situation where you got people who was featured in the documentary, people like talking heads like Torre and Charlemagne the God. These are very popular, well-known black media male stars. Now they're being accused of improper behavior when it comes to dealing with women.
Well, Gloria Allred is a lesbian, and so is her daughter. And they've been propagandizing amongst every female they can get a hold of. And what they've been doing is extorting money out of a lot of these men that they threaten with some kind of action and personal embarrassment. That's what they've been doing.
Now, at one point, wasn't Gloria Allred's daughter going to represent Harvey Weinstein at one point?
Well, no telling. I mean, a lawyer can represent both sides of an issue. You get trained to do that, and if you're a good lawyer, you should be able to. Basically, a client you have week one may be on the, one side of a type of case, and week two you may have somebody else that's on the other side. So it's nothing unusual. When I was an adjunct law professor, I used to have my classes prepare to argue a certain side of the case, and then at the last moment I'd make them switch sides. They didn't like it, but the point was that they had to be able to understand both sides. So that's just what it is. And some are just into the thing of making money. Also, some of them have political agendas or social agendas, and they are not adverse to being ruthless in pushing that social or political agenda.
I like the way you approach your class, like having them diverse sides. I really wish that that could be done with the social media thing, because I believe that people are letting their emotions get the best of their judgment and how they perceive things. Is it possible? Yeah, is it possible it would be possible to get a decent jury that could think out of the people right now, out of the masses?
My experience in 40 years of doing it is that if you got 5 juries, you get 3 of them that are pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is just flat awful, and you wonder if they ever went to a school or opened and read a book. And the other, just you want to shake your head and just say, yeah, they exist. But they are out somewhere in Never Neverland. Like, okay, didn't you think there was reasonable doubt in this case? Oh, there was plenty of reasonable doubt, but we thought that was a mere technicality and the police wouldn't have arrested the person if they hadn't done it. You're like, what? You get these things. So I wound up, when I was on the bench, taking precautions directed toward that one either bizarre jury out of 5, that one real dumb jury out of 5. 3 of them would be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But people are like that. Sometimes on Twitter, I engender heated discussions amongst some people from those who are just dogmatically into being politically correct without having thought about it. It gets fascinating to see what you come up with. It is fascinating when you see what you come up with. It's just like, hey, do you think about this?
Well, let me ask you this then. Like, you was involved in the MLK birthday is today, basically. We observe the birthday on Monday coming up, but you was involved, you played a pivotal role in the MLK assassination, post-assassination stuff, as far as the court stuff. You presided over part of the case where you found out that the gun that is in the possession of the so-called National Civil Rights Museum is not the gun that was used to kill MLK. And you raised doubts if, even James Earl Ray was involved to a certain extent.
Oh, yeah, Ray was not the gunman.
But could you get like in a U.S. civil trial, right, in Memphis, December 8th, 1999?
I testified as a ballistics expert in the civil trial they had in front of the late James Swearingen, circuit court judge, in front of a jury too.
Yeah, so I'm asking that the jury found the government, possibly government, complicit in killing Dr. King. Could you get that same type of verdict 20 years later? If we were looking at, with the age of social media and all this stuff, this social media lynch mob mentality, could we get?
Yeah, that is a problem.
Okay.
We have these people that on the left 25 years ago were into being politically correct, and politically correct at that time was follow the Constitution, innocent till proven guilty. And then you got the OJ trial.
Right.
And that started going south on that because of that sleaze Nancy Grace that was the reporter that kept inaccurately reporting events and stating to the country that the evidence against OJ was devastating when actually it was not. It was very weak, if not non-existent. So that's the start of it. You can blame that sleaze for a lot of the bad things that are happening now, but in any event, the politically correct thing is now women are not satisfied, or their sycophants are not satisfied, and they don't care how they do it. If you can't do it legally in a court of law, then let's do it in the press. So you can you can lynch somebody in the press and ruin their careers or their circumstances if you don't like what happens in a court. America's always been a country where the phenomenon exists where everybody knows somebody did it, but nobody can prove it.
Mm-hmm.
That's like Michelle / Michael Jackson. He's a pervert. He got up under that black umbrella in the rain and stated he thought there was nothing wrong about showing love where a grown man would be naked in the bed with a 10-year-old boy. Now, if that isn't pedophilic perversion, I don't know what is. That was out of his own mouth, but too many of the parents involved got a lot of money from him, and they refused to give evidence, or they had mental lapses. Let's put it that way.
So now, in the case of Michael Jackson, or you said Michelle, would it be fair to say that you could take people's words out of context? And I would encourage people to do their diligent research and find out what was actually said in a certain contextual form, because I agree with Paul Mooney when it comes to Michael Jackson, that he's more X-Files than pedophile. Like he was very eccentric.
I've talked to security people, I've talked to chauffeurs, and he was a pervert. Straight up and down pervert. A lot of security people would get hired, get paid a whole lot, and couldn't stand being out there a week looking at what they saw. Okay? Chauffeurs tell stories about chauffeuring that person or when they were in the Jackson 5 around, and it was not pretty. That statement that I have seen many times that he makes under the umbrella, standing in the rain, there's no context. He says he sees nothing wrong with a grown man being in bed naked with a 10-year-old boy if all he's doing is showing love. Now, there is a story that was reported in the European press that Jackson gave a special concert for one of the popes, and he sang 2 hours worth of castrati songs. Castrati songs are basically obsolete operettas that could only be sung on the register necessary if the person had been castrated before puberty. And nominally, the last person who could sing castrati songs died somewhere in the 1950s, and he had been castrated by some hill country priest in Italy who admired his lovely voice. So the fact that Michael Jackson could sing songs that could not be sung by anyone who had not been castrated pre-puberty, I find very interesting.
Well, does it make him very talented, though?
What's that?
Will it make him just a very talented singer? You could do that without getting castrated?
No, in other words, you can't sing the register. Beethoven, Bach, Mendelssohn, they all wrote castrati songs,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't sing them if you reach puberty with your balls. Now, on that, he had an amputated nose because it got necrotic because he had so many surgeries on it. He had Polynesian hair woven into his scalp, and the way they do that is they would make an incision in the back and then peel his scalp halfway off and insert the Polynesian hair into his scalp and thread it through a small little button and pull the button up against his scalp. That's why that thing was in the news some years ago about him sleeping in an oxygen tent. He had so many surgeries that the circulation was so disturbed that he was getting necrotic. So the oxygen tent was so that he wouldn't lose his snout, which he did. And you can see sometimes when he got to sweating and they did a close-up, there is tape on the side of his nose holding the prostheses against his face.
Mm.
He is a freak. And he also had his melanin in his face destroyed by laser. And if you ever see the making of the video Thriller, there is a scene toward the end where he's sitting in a barber chair and he has no shirt on and he's just as chocolate as he ever was. But there is a sharp line that goes around, matches his jawline, and he's white as a sheet above that and perfectly chocolate below it. That's where he had the melanin cells destroyed with laser. And it turns out later on that not only were none of these children that were supposed to be his genetically, the so-called mothers weren't even the mothers. And it appears he bought the kids someplace from somebody. Never did find out who, because I guess they didn't want to go after him. But that's a case of can't prove it. But he was a pervert. He carried on.
Well, I also heard that, look at documentaries, they said he planted stories in the tabloids. So he was his own worst enemy when it came to planting these stories about him being so eccentric and out there in the tabloids as well.
Well, he didn't have to be eccentric. He was just something wrong with him. And the other thing was he was self-hating. The English psychologist did an interesting analysis of him when he died. The American ones wanted to blame his dad, but the English type said his dad was no worse than anybody else's dad's been throughout history. And if it wasn't for Dad, they wouldn't have been going to the bank so often. But what they did get on was his mother, who they said undermined all possibility of discipline in the household, because if they did badly, they didn't suffer any loss, and if they did well, they didn't get anything more than they got when they messed up. And if they messed up, they got no less than if they did well. So they did not grow up with a sense of proportion or a sense of accomplishment, and they had some big, bad self-hate problems.
Now, it's interesting you speak of Joe Jackson. We lost him last summer, and folks very much spoke ill of him, although he, as far as being a father, you never heard about his kids getting into any legal trouble with the law. He raised his children. He made, two of them to superstars, Janet Jackson and Michael Jackson. And, he was a strong black hetero male as far as I know from his image. And it seemed like as soon as he died, they started attacking him in the media.
That's par for the course. What the whole scam is with the press is attack any kind of masculinity, particularly black masculinity. Now, I used to date a sister out on the West Coast at one point some years ago, and one of the Jacksons was interested in her, and she lived in a gated community, and that fool would climb up on a ladder with a pair of binoculars and sit on top of the wall trying to look at her apartment to see if she was up to something.
Okay.
Now, I found that a little strange. She wouldn't have anything to do with it.
It's interesting. Well, I say people are kind of, what is normal, though? How do you define normal, Judge? Everybody got a different way of understanding.
That's not normal to sit night after night on top of a fence with binoculars trying to stare at somebody.
I think I agree with you on that one. But I'm saying, like, it's just with everything becoming so normalized now. Because it was at one point that homosexuality was considered a mental illness. Now it's
Well,
very much accepted now.
let's put it this way. The majority of the world probably considers it still to be a mental illness. And they don't treat the gay thing too well elsewhere in the world except in Western Europe and in the United States. So let's say the majority of the world does not have the U.S. opinion about it. And there are probably many more mental health specialists who think something's wrong with it, whereas here, the politically correct thing is to say it's okay. That's like this thing about fluid gender.
Mm-hmm.
The test on gender is that there's a body laying on the slab at the morgue. What would the medical examiner declare it to be when he examined it, male or female?
Mm.
See, they're pushing this tranny thing with the fluid gender bit to get people used to the idea of making choices as to what they want to be. See, Mother Nature has spent a whole lot of time, billions of years, and a lot of effort, including a lot of mass extinctions and stuff, and not so mass extinctions, working on the attraction between male and female of the species, whether it's salamander, reptile, bird, or mammal.
Mm-hmm.
And there is an attraction between male and female. Male birds a lot of times don't look the same as female birds. And, there's sexual dimorphism in humans, chimpanzees, bonobos, and gorillas. So there is a difference. Now, when somebody wants to sit there and take his time to say, I want to look like the opposite sex and dress up like it, then that's false advertising, that's bait and switch, and that's a matter of what you see ain't what you get.
Mm.
And it is problematical when a male starts trying to pass himself off as a female and a female starts trying to pass herself off as a male, and people say, oh, that's fluid gender. They're what they claim to be. No. When a man who has been picked up or picks up one of what he thinks is a girl because she's got boobs and she's dressed like one and gets her home and finds out she's got something just like he's got, that ain't cool.
Mm.
That does not make that thing a woman. And when a woman tries to masquerade as a man and picks up a woman and brings her home, and when the woman finds out, wait a minute, you got the same equipment that does not make that thing a woman. And what are you supposed to call them, an it? You got a dick, you ain't a she, you're a he. And if you don't want to be either one, if you don't want to be that, then you're an it. If you got a vagina and, that makes you a she, not a he.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets into the part about all the dues you have to pay to be a good woman or to be a good man. And you can't masquerade and do this stuff. But, that's the thing they're doing. So also H.R. 2282, a House bill in the Democratic-controlled House now, wants to modify the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to accommodate what is going to be pedophilia. Pedophilia has been defined as a sexual orientation that's compulsory. The person has no choice. So the definition they're trying to put in does not get into pedophilia, but what it does get into is those conditions that are not the choice of the person affected. In other words, race, color, national origin, religion. Religion, that's a brainwashing matter, but it's what happens to kids when their parents force a religion down their throats. They can't help it. And then sex, and then medical condition. See, those are the things that are protected under the Civil Rights Act. Now they want to make it into those conditions, other conditions that are not the choice of somebody. So you get into the gay thing, and then you get into the thing about the trannies, and then you get into the thing about pedophiles who are compulsory about what they do. I would have psychological tests run on people I sentenced for child rape and child molestation, and I was informed that it was a very, very strong compulsion. What they would do is put transducers on the penis of the individual being tested, and they'd show them effectively porn movies. They wouldn't get an erection looking at women, but they'd get an erection looking at young children in compromised situations. Somebody like that, there's nothing you can do except to chemically castrate them. And yet they want to turn them loose on society. And then they got this little 9-year-old kid that currently dances in a gay bar in New York that's running around talking about he is pushing to put the P in LGBTQ for pedophilia, and he wants to lead the man-boy thing. And then they've got NAMBLA, National Association of Man-Boy Love, which is a sick thing, but that's been around for years. See, this idea of you don't call somebody handicapped, you call them challenged. You don't call them crippled, you call them challenged. You don't call them perverts, you call them non-mainstream. I don't have a problem with gay folk. They do what the hell they want to do behind closed doors. What I do have a problem with is when they start trying to shove this stuff down the throats of children. Now, in some states like California, gender orientation, I call it sex orientation, is not considered sexual activity. So the schools don't have to notify the parents when they want to teach this in class. See, if they're talking about sex education, the parents have to be given the opportunity to opt out. But when it comes down to talking about transvestites, they don't have to notify the parents because that's not considered sexual activity. So they get this stuff where, like this father in the Midwest, the grandfather got upset because they were having his grandson dress up like a girl in a dress. Or in California, they had this thing where they had a coming out ceremony for a child, which freaked out a whole bunch of other children looking at this. See, these kids haven't even reached puberty. They don't even know what sex is, but they're teaching them about this kind of thing.
Well, it's like a programming or indoctrination. It's not about natural selection or anything. It's not about nature. It's about they nurturing some type of agenda. Man, Judge, I want to ask you this. Do you feel that it's right for same-sex couples to raise children?
I think all the examples I am aware of, something's wrong with the kid when he starts getting past puberty and starts getting in high school. I have a lot of principals that I know, have known for years when they were just ordinary teachers, and they tell me that they have kids who have severe problems in school, and then when they have a parent-teacher conference, 2 mothers show up or 2 fathers show up. See, humans are genetically evolved, physiologically evolved, mentally evolved, emotionally involved to deal with traditional 2-parent male-female families. Now, I know the argument about it's better to have a loving couple adopt them than to have them in an orphanage, but I'm not so sure, because you may have your feelings hurt being in an orphanage, but you may not be actively recruited to something that you're not supposed to be recruited to. Because remember, the argument about tolerance is based on the theory that the condition is genetic. Gay folk are born that way. They don't become that way according to the popular politically correct theory. So if they adopt someone, are they going to run tests on that child, which is when it's too young to have tests run on it, to determine if that child has got a proclivity or an inclination to be gay? You can't do it. So that defeats their own argument. You take a child that you don't know the background on, who has not shown any signs, and you turn the child over to a gay couple. Are they going to raise it, and is it going to see the interaction between a gay couple, or is it going to see the interaction between normal parents? But, you know, that's something that the Supreme Court rules upon, so we will see in about 50 years the results. Most of these studies they've run, by the way, the sampling is too small. For one thing, they aren't being objective about it because they have a point to prove, which is that it's okay, so they selectively view the experimental data to support the conclusion they've already determined they're going to support. And the third thing about it is that they have not observed the subjects long enough to see what happens. They have not waited until they were 50, 60, 70 years old to see what goes on.
Mm.
And a lot of the standards they use, number 4, to make the assessment are not valid, or if they are valid, they are in the inverse. In other words, ordinary people would look at this person and say, oh man, that person's really messed up. But using the criteria that they use to make the assessment, they would come out okay. We know there are those people that aren't crazy in terms of certifiably crazy, but nobody can get along with them, and they're hard to deal with, and everybody says, no, I don't want to be around them. But that's a politically correct way of life these days, and they've run a beautiful propaganda program for 50 years with the contrivance of Hollywood, Madison Avenue, and a lot of the elected officials who are charter members of LGBTQ. At the top, that's what a lot of them are. And a lot of this mess you see that's been going on in government is merely smokescreen type activity to cover up for what they're doing behind the scenes on these issues. 18 months before the election in 2016, the Democratic Party wasted a lot of it arguing on who gets to piss in the girls' bathroom.
Mm.
Now, I've got a granddaughter. I don't want her in some place where some dude walks in perverted and hikes his dress up and swings out to go take a pee.
Oh, man.
Or even worse, see what the Obama administration's executive orders and edicts were about is this didn't just include bathrooms or toilets. This included locker rooms in junior high and high school, and this included showers in junior high and high school. And can you see a boy walking in with his thing hung out, you know, showering with a bunch of naked girls, or vice versa? What kind of mess that's going to be?
Man, Judge, I got to ask you this. I mean, do you see, I'm just thinking about all the stuff you say, the visuals is crazy. Do you see homosexuality as being kind of like a gateway to pedophilia?
I don't.
Okay.
But there is an uneasy alliance going on because all of the above are classified as being born that way. Now, you go back to the Gay Rights Manifesto of 1972, and under state action number 7 was to remove age requirements for sexual consent. And also in there is to define the protected categories as those that embrace people who, by dint of their nature, are incapable of resisting the type of sexuality that they would manifest. So that's a classic definition of a pedophile, somebody that can't resist being sexually attracted to children. That's not good. Now, gays have their rights to do whatever in the hell they want to do. But when it starts getting into policy, social or political, they're just like anybody else. The Republican Party is wide open to attack and criticism behind their policy advocacy. The same with the Democratic Party. The same with the Green Party.
Mm-hmm.
The same with LGBTQ. See, once you get in that arena of starting to advocate for social and political and economic policy, you become wide open for attack. You know, I'm sure there's some Republicans you can drink beer with and some Democrats you can drink beer with. Hell, done a lot of that, but you don't have to agree with them. Like I detested and despised Hillary Clinton. A lot of people can't stand Trump. Some of both are friends of mine. I like Bernie Sanders, but a lot of people apparently resent Bernie Sanders for causing dear Hillary to lose. For whatever that's worth.
Well, I'm also thinking about you saying all that. Like, I look at the LGBTQP whatever, as well as Jews as being protected classes in society, in American society. They're very well organized for their agendas, and they got strong representation at certain levels in government. But also, I'm thinking about the fact what happened last year with the lesbian couple who had a majority of black kids. Yeah,
those people.
Yeah, but they were mostly majority black kids. I'm saying black children are not being protected in this system. It seems like black children are being used to be adopted by gay people and everything, celebrities and like persons.
Well, look at what's that white female.
Yeah, Charlize Theron, right? The actress from South. That's what I'm talking about. She,
two boys into girls.
Right, that's crazy. Why is nobody really speaking to all these so-called black celebrities? They scared to touch that topic with her.
Because most of them are gay.
I kind of figured that. You talking about mostly black celebrities?
Yeah. LGBT on its site claims that 85 to 90% of everybody involved in Hollywood, actors, writers, directors, producers, whatever, are gay or bisexual or lesbian.
Wow.
There aren't so much transvestites because they get to do that on the job. Look at Tyler Perry and all of the Wine brothers and all of the rest of them that are dressed up like girls.
Wow.
And everybody laughs. See, but that's by design. There's nothing funny about that.
But what about these celebrity types like the Madonnas and Charlize Theron? They're adopting black children. Should black children be like, why are more of us, not like even the black church, stepping up on behalf of these foster black kids? I mean, why anybody speaking out about the children being taken advantage of in this way?
Well, it's not unusual. Mm-hmm. I went to college with some black people that got adopted by whites. Mm-hmm. One of them was okay, and several of them weren't okay. Or let's take a classic example. Dr. George Washington Carver. Mm-hmm. He got adopted by a white couple, but they already had a daughter. So guess what they did? The day after they adopted him and brought him home, they got him castrated.
Right. And
that becomes a metaphor for the experience.
And you could actually hear his voice. They recorded his voice. You could actually hear his voice, and he had a very high pitched voice as a result of being castrated so young.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about the castrati, but okay, I'm gonna ask you this because this is on my mind too. I'm thinking, I got these wheels. I'm paranoid. I think you should be paranoid as a black man in America right now. I really feel they're pushing this homosexual thing against black males so we can stop reproducing ourselves, because there's been studies showing that white folks are dying off faster than they can reproduce, and black folks still reproducing in spite of abortion rates being real high and stuff like that. So you think there's a conspiracy to stop black hetero males from existing in order to stop
No, I don't
reproduction?
think that's what it is.
Okay.
I don't think they're really worried about that so much as they are trying to attack masculinity, and starting with black men, who are the most obvious examples because of the way we carry ourselves sometimes. That makes it easier to do it on another level. They have adopted the black woman as a role model because, as they say, black women are the only women in America that know how to handle men.
That's interesting.
Sapphire.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I haven't heard it in years, but Sapphire used to be an insult about the wrong kind of acting woman.
Mm-hmm.
I heard them 50 years ago talk about how much they admired the way black women run their men. Black women run their men.
Mm.
So it's not surprising, but it's just like the NAACP. They had W.E.B. Du Bois was the only black founder of the NAACP. There were two white people, one woman and one male. They were Jewish.
Mm.
And why did they get interested in founding the NAACP? Because they had a higher motive as far as they were concerned. They were concerned about people of their particular ethnicity, Jews. So the theory was, is if you couldn't do it to a Negro, you couldn't do it to a Jew.
Mm.
So they would use black folk, colored folk, as test cases to challenge stuff that had an indirect or direct impact on Jews. And then for the first part of the 20th century, the first half of it, there weren't any civil rights laws on the books. What most advances came under were the ASPCA laws, American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. The theory on that was, if you couldn't do it to a dog, you couldn't do it to a Negro, you couldn't do it to a Negro, you couldn't do it to a Jew.
Mm.
And the first two long-term presidents of the NAACP were Jewish. Turned out they were also FBI agents, but that's another story.
Mm.
Not informants, but agents.
Now you talking about like the Spingard guy, or the Spingard medal, whatever his name was?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See, I'm saying, to me, when you say that, I'm thinking that black folks is collateral damage for everybody else. So since we just lab rats and guinea pigs for everybody else's investment.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's depressing to think like that, Judge, but it's reality, right? I mean, history bears it out,
Yeah.
and what's going on right now.
And see, unfortunately, we do a lot to sustain the stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you go someplace, look at how we get dressed. You know, got a baseball cap turned around, you know. The white kids emulate that because they think it's cool. You got on tacky stuff. Your pants are dragging. Your colors don't match. The women have on garish clothing and outrageous hairstyles. 15 pounds of weave in their heads, you know. And we are loud. You can hear what we have to say on the other side of the restaurant because we got to share it with everybody. We use the N-word all out in the parking lots going to our cars. And, you know, that sustains the stereotypes. And see, that's bad for us in the long run, but it's good for America in the short term because when you have 320 million people, you have a massive amount of undisplaced interpersonal hostility and aggression.
Mm-hmm.
And Europe and the rest of the world has always had outside boogeymen that they use to displace that kind of hostility and aggression on somebody outside, but America has the Negro who is resident in the country, and we look different from everybody else from a block away. You can see our complexions or our hair, and we become good stereotypical scapegoats. In other words, the typical American other than the Negro, white, brown, red, yellow, can say our problems are because of these black folk. And even if they don't lynch them anymore, they can vicariously blame them. And that lets them vent frustration and aggression so they can behave more homogeneously. Now, I wrote a paper 50 years ago about it. And based on what I laid out in that paper, one of the reasons that you could say you've got such a mess right now is overt racism is not as popular as it once used to be across a broad spectrum like it used to be. I mean, there are pockets, the obvious white supremacists, certain misfit police, the Klan types, the American Nazi types, and the general run of skinheads. You know, that's, or at least what they used to call skinheads. You know, they can't see anything else but the fact that, you know, black folk are ruining the country. That's that race war thing I was in as a documentary. And by the way, the term race war didn't come from the black folk. That came from the white folk that were white supremacists. That's their perspective on what's going on. It's in Europe. They've got these Europeans now, they've got some internal scapegoats since they've got immigration from the Middle East and North Africa and Africa. They've got dark people to blame who live there. And they are jumping right on the boat to start ramping up the rheostat, turn the heat up on scapegoating.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nothing new. It's just we happen to be that class in the United States if you're black.
Well, I just wish that, you know, we advocate for making, like, just like the Jews and gays are protected classes of people, we should be protected class. I mean, in terms of the abuse we have endured from the system,
Well,
you laid it out.
You can call us the N-word, nothing will happen except maybe you get your ass whipped, but if you call gay dude a fag out on the West Coast, that's a hate crime, it's a misdemeanor.
Right, exactly. I mean, I've been saying, like, I keep on thinking, I also thought about it yesterday. I said, could this high-tech lynching, cause I look at how they're doing black men in particular, is this worse than a physical, is this worse than what they did to our ancestors in terms of physical lynching? I mean, the effects of it.
Physically lynching anybody.
Right.
But that was what was behind the, aside from that sleaze Nancy Grace fabricating a whole lot about the O.J. trial. It was O.J. supposedly killed the white woman. Mm-hmm. Even if she was a junkie slut. But, you know.
But also, you go back in the past, it was the white women of the South calling for the lynching of black men. Just like like Nancy Grace is a woman, a daughter of the South.
Yeah, and see, the deal is that sometimes those things that fascinate us, that have an attraction that we don't think we can resist, we demonize them. Mm-hmm. That's like these Southern Baptist ministers who got found trying to solicit boys in airport bathrooms. See, that's a lot of times people are quite willing to demonize something they're afraid of because they can see the application to themselves. They're tempted.
Well, that goes to Bishop Eddie Long, because he was very vocal about the homosexual lifestyle, and then come to find out.
Yeah,
he was very active, you know, speaking out against homosexuality in Atlanta. Then we found out what happened with him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there it is. So bottom line is gays have a right to do what they do like anybody else. But I just find it peculiar that they define themselves by their sexuality instead of just like the rest of it. We don't get out and advertise who likes to be on the top and who's on the bottom when we get up on stage unless we're doing a comedy act.
Well, actually, it's crossed my mind too, Jay. I got to ask you this. Is it fair to say that there are some black women out there that are making black men gay? Cause I look at how some women raise their black sons.
Yes.
Okay, can you talk about that?
Like that.
Yeah, could they be having earrings in their ear before they're 2 years old? I don't understand.
Yeah.
That's like weird.
And look at what happens at the Paradiso when they have that replay of that last Michael Jackson tour thing. And how many screens they got at Paradiso? 18.
Okay, they got a lot of them. Yeah.
7 of them got Michael Jackson on, and all these women are down there bought new clothes and got their boys with them, and they've got white socks on and one glove on, you know. Like, why you want him to look like that when this boy would sit there, if he was still alive, would be trying to sodomize you? Well, he can't do that. He'd be trying to give him fellatio.
Oh, my God. Well, Judge, nobody, I mean, I know what you said about security. Nobody came forth with the information or court of law to put this man behind bars. That's my problem with it. It might be true. I don't know. But it's not been officially proven.
Look. Legally, he's innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
They were trying to come back on him for some other stuff because they were having the hardest damn time getting those women who had been bought off and paid to bring their children over there to come forward as witnesses or to not forget everything and, you know, have their recollections refreshed. But in America, there's a common saying, everybody knows he did it, but you can't prove it. I know some stone cold killers walking around in public right now.
Right.
They killed not 1, not 2, not 3, but several people, but they didn't tell anybody, and there are no witnesses. And they haven't been prosecuted, can't prosecute. That Johnson woman, we couldn't prosecute her in 6 murder trials that they had up in my courtroom. She and the person working with her that took the hit out, everybody knew their names, but because under American law, you can't convict somebody on the uncorroborated testimony or evidence of an accomplice, they couldn't go after him.
The judge lady talking about is the one that Kim Kardashian convinced.
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
That one.
The Queen Pen.
Yes.
Wow.
And another guy, he had a tire shop down here on Airways, and he's the one set the hit up. Everybody knew his name, but they couldn't prosecute him because he kept his mouth shut. And everybody that was a witness against him was an accomplice. And they hadn't have anything to corroborate it.
Well, I guess the system works, right? Here, my thing is, I told somebody who was a lawyer, I said, stop calling it the justice system. It's the legal system. Well, it's not about justice.
It's the justice system because America and before that, the common law in England had this principle. It is better for 100 guilty men to go free than for one innocent man to be convicted.
So it's really not about justice then if you can't get the right people to go to jail.
No, in other words, what I'm saying is it's viewed, or it was viewed by the system, except when it came to black folk, it was such a repugnant thing to convict an innocent man that it would be better to let a bunch of guilty folk go free than to risk convicting an innocent person.
Which happens all the time when you look at the Troy Davis case and some other cases.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there are more interesting examples than that. Like, do you know that you've heard? Okay, everybody's heard of the Earps and the Doc Holliday,
right, Tombstone,
out at the OK Corral, right? You know they prosecuted everybody for first-degree murder, but they got acquitted.
All right. Well, it's well, Kawhi Earp would be considered a bad cop in today's terms. I mean, like he'll be an
Well,
abusive
yeah,
cop.
Wild Bill Hickok
He
got
killed his partner.
prosecuted. Yeah, Wild Bill Hickok got prosecuted for murder several times.
And he killed his deputy too by accident.
And, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that one was an accidental homicide, but
He was crazy.
yeah, look at hell, that clown Nathan Bedford Forrest went to trial twice for murdering white folk.
Yeah, man, he murdered folks that killed his uncle. It was like some type of Clint Eastwood Unforgiven thing he was doing.
Yeah, but he killed somebody with a balk of wood who just argued with him too much.
You know, America loves their homicidal maniacs. We call them heroes, and we make holidays for them. And that's what we do over here. It's just interesting.
Well, look at Europe.
Mm-hmm.
The longest running case in English jurisprudence is a case wherein every time there's a new chancellor, he calls the case and they announce unready to proceed. The plaintiffs own a large tract of land that includes Liverpool, and they don't collect taxes. They collect rents that are paid to the family. And the plaintiffs were the previous owners of the land, and how they were previous is the guy was out hunting, and the ancestors of the defendants captured him. They stripped him naked, tied him to a spit, and slow roasted him over a fire for 3 days.
Wow. Until
in his agony, he agreed to sign over the properties, and then they slit his throat to give him a mercy killing.
Jesus.
Now, that's the longest running case in English history. It's brutal. What do you think they did with these broadswords that they have on all kinds of government symbols? A sword, a battle axe, a shield, a lance, armor, knight in shining armor. They killed people. That's what they were doing. Their direct analogy for them is, the mafia setup.
Yeah. Judge, when I was thinking about what you just said, I was thinking about that scene in Godfather 1 when Michael Corleone is walking down the street with Kate, played by Diane Keaton. And he talking about how his father wanted him to be a legitimate, like, politician and, professional person. And then she said something to the effect that, Michael, the president doesn't kill people. And then he said, who's the naive one, Kate? Something like that. She's a school teacher. And she actually believed that the president is not involved in killing large numbers of people.
Of course they are.
Right. All of them, even Obama.
Well, Obama killed a lot of folks. In fact, they violated the court order enjoining him from killing this American citizen and the American citizen's son.
But they actually killed him, right? He killed the son and the father, right?
Yeah, the son and the father.
They called it the Drone Ranger. That was his nickname, the Drone Ranger.
And it was admitted by the U.S. government that they had committed no crime that was cognizable in the United States. They couldn't be indicted or charged with any wrongdoing.
The people loved Obama. They're such a nice, Obama, he's so handsome and so polite. He's a killer.
Yeah, well, that's what his daddy did. His daddy ran the death squads for the Indonesian army.
There you go. Killer.
The Gestapo.
Yeah, bunch of killers.
Just like down in South America.
What I'm saying, but people look at these people as being genteel and nice, and people's full of shit. I'll be honest, like, even with, I gotta ask you about this case too, but even with the Johnson thing you just said, people let the media bullshit them. The media don't tell nobody they be loving us to sleep. You know what I'm saying? They don't even look at the court case.
Kim Kardashian said the poor old lady was just trying to keep her house and got busted with a bag of coke. Do you know what they convicted her of being in possession of?
What?
6,600 pounds of 95% pure cocaine and several tens of millions of dollars.
So in reality, she was Ma Barker. What are you telling me?
Exactly.
Okay. Not no sweet old lady.
And guess how much that cut out on a street cut? That's 18,000 pounds of street cut coke. That's 9 tons. I mean, think about it.
So
the typical SUV doesn't weigh but 4,000 pounds.
So she basically was a gorilla pimp when it came to the drug stuff.
Exactly. She ran and controlled the coke rackets from New Orleans all the way to Chicago to St. Louis.
Wow.
And up to Louisville. All of these crackhead babies and crackheads we had running around in Memphis in the late 80s and 90s, that was her. She represented the Mexican cartels.
Mm.
She collected the money and sent the money south and got the dope when it came north. And she dispensed it to the street gangs.
And people forget Memphis is one of the biggest distribution hubs in the country. Everything comes through here, including them drugs.
But that was one old lady with one bag of coke just trying to keep her house, and they indicted her ass on that too, for setting up sham transactions to conceal the cash money she spent for some big houses. The woman made tens of millions of dollars.
See, my thing, I wonder if she kept any of that money. Think she kept some of that money hidden somewhere?
She may have, but I tell you what, they had a bunch of people in the federal witness protection program behind that, and a lot of folk copped out to 10 years.
Wow.
In the same case.
Crazy. Wow.
One of her co-defendants who just worked for her got a life sentence. So she was his boss. Why does she get hers commuted and he's still doing his life sentence?
Yeah, but where are you going to get this type of hard, like, when people, this requires investigative journalism, people just taking themselves to look at the court document.
Anybody can go to Wikipedia. For the last 10 years, that case has been on Wikipedia.
Wow.
Running the whole thing down. And they've got abstract of the court findings.
And but what made Trump let her go then? Trump got access to this information.
Nobody checked it out.
Okay.
He was anxious to get some good PR, and Miss Slutty Kim, you know, amateur porn queen, she sat there and, you know, she just took a load in the face, and that's how the family gets the money. For the last 18 years, you know, $4.95 a hit. Now $7.95 a hit on Comcast, Xfinity, DirecTV, Dish TV, AT&T cable, or you go to any major hotel or motel in America, you can get it on adult entertainment under uncensored television. Not even movies, uncensored TV. That's how the family made their money. Yeah,
that mom reminded me of this. She's one of the most successful madams of all time.
and then look at it. You had that pervert, what is it, Bruce Jenner for a stepdaddy. And then they wonder everybody in that family screwed up.
Well, you know, Bruce Jenner, Kylie Jenner is almost a billionaire, though. That's the thing. But they got a fetish for black men.
No, he ain't almost a billionaire.
Not only his daughter, the makeup person.
She ain't no billionaire.
Well, she almost. She said she worth $900 million. I'm going by what they say.
No, that is such bullshit.
Okay, Doug, break it down.
The family has is from Kim getting her little ass screwed by Ray J, Brandy's brother. And all of that stuff is Hollywood hype. That's like Atlanta Housewives. Turns out those folk didn't own those houses. Studio was renting them.
A lot of them were even married. It seems like they're not really married.
Weren't side married. Pieces. They're housewives of Atlanta, and only 1 out of the 9 was married, if I remember correctly.
Well, I'm saying, okay, this is what I'm talking about. There's nobody going to read for themselves. Everybody going to research. They're going to take what the media tells them is the truth. That's what's scary about this reality we're living in.
A truth is this. Joseph, pronounced Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi minister of propaganda, said, tell a lie once, it's a lie. Tell it 1,000 times, it becomes the truth. Tell a lie long enough and loud enough, and you can get anybody to believe it. So when you get the lie told, courtesy of the media, where it comes on over and over and over again, and you've got news 24/7, and very little to put on the news except garbage like that. They just keep blasting it out over and over and over and over. And Kim says, when Trump called me, I was naked. You know, like, come on.
She said that? She said that? Well.
I know. And then you get that fool, what's her name, Kanye Kardashian, jumping up on the table at the White House acting a fool. You know, it's like, hey, it's all hype for the peasantry, like Caesar said. feed them and entertain them, and they won't care what the hell happens.
And that's what's going on now. And they don't really care what the hell happened.